to The Gathering Place, a community in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, dedicated to extending God's redeeming love. I'm Jessica Sanders, and we are so happy to be worshiping with you today. Please take a moment to fill out our Connect card by going to thegatheringplacefl.org/Connect card. This is also a great way to send in prayer requests. Today we'll be hearing from John Daling, our youth discipleship leader, with a message titled An Epiphany on Epiphany. And now for a time of prayer. We hope you enjoy the service.
Good morning. My name is John Daling. I'm the Youth Discipleship Director here at The Gathering Place, and I'm here to bring you this week's message. And we're going to start off this week with a reading from the book of Matthew in chapter 2, and it's going to be a long one, so buckle in as we're doing chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. It's a story. You got to read the whole story, right? So, it's titled The Visit of the Magi. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where's the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. When he called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler, who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So, here we are in another interesting moment in the life of the Gathering Place. It's fortunate that sometimes I get to speak at these strange little moments of our history. What am I talking about? Well, back in 2020, I was actually the last person to preach in the sanctuary before we shut down for COVID. At that point, we were never sure if we were going to open up again, but eventually we did. But then in 2021, I was able to preach at what we call the penultimate sermon at the old sanctuary. Penultimate being the next to last. And now here I am today on the last Sunday of a major pastoral change in the life of our church. Pastor Smiley has retired officially. Maybe he's watching out there somewhere. And next week, we get to hear our first sermon from our new pastor, Mike Zadaro. And I know we're all really looking forward to that. And I am just blessed to be here today to talk to you about this little thing that is known as Epiphany. Now, the story of Epiphany is essentially what I just read to you. It's the coming of the three kings to Mary. And the day of Epiphany is celebrated as the celebration of the day that the Magi actually arrived at the household. Now, I did a little bit of very, very unscientific research, and I polled people on the internet. That's a terrible idea. But I asked, how many of your churches actually acknowledge or celebrate Epiphany? And the resounding answer was 0. And some people actually with, what is Epiphany? And I don't blame them for not knowing, because really, growing up in the Methodist Church, this wasn't something that we really talked about much. The word didn't mean anything to me. All I know is Epiphany is usually some sort of great idea. It's an enlightenment moment. So, Epiphany, here we are. And there's a lot of things that, I always assumed when I was a kid that the Magi were always there, because when you have your little manger scene and Jesus is in the middle and the shepherds are over here, and well, you got to put the Magi over here because they came from a different direction than the shepherds. But really, who were these guys? Who were these Magi? Or they're called wise men. We sing a song about we three kings of Orient are. So now they're kings? What are these guys? I've got questions. So they're from the East. Where? The East is a pretty big place, right? If we're dealing with Jerusalem, there's a lot of things out to the east. There's, we have the Empire of Persia sitting out there at the time. How far east did we go? Did we go all the way east to China? Don't know. And actually, that's why you'll notice in a lot of depictions of the Magi, they're looking kind of multi-ethnic here. We're not quite sure. Why those gifts? Why gold, frankincense, and myrrh? It's not in there. And did you know they have names? There's no names here. But tradition holds in some churches that they actually give the Magi names of Gaspar, Balthazar, and Melchior. Who knew, right? So it's this cool little story. And by the way, if you go to Matthew, which, by the way, Matthew is the only gospel where this story exists, if you read on in chapter 2 and finish out the chapter, it gets a little gruesome, because Herod, he had some really bad plans for all the kids in Bethlehem. It's not good. Let's just go that way. It's a good thing the Magi did not go back to Herod. Let's just say that. So it's a really cool story. Cool story. But there's a lot that's left unsaid. There's a lot of details that I want to know, questions that need answering, which is why people try to fill in the blanks on some of those. And I know Christmas is over, and by the time of this, officially Epiphany is over. But I got one more little Christmas song I like playing, and it's by a group called Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And let's throw a little detail into this story of the Magi. It's actually quite fun. Here's a little introduction to it.
Now you all heard the story about Bethlehem, how the child was born and the three wise men heard the preacher tell it like the preacher does. But let me tell you, children, that's not how it was. Now you might ask me what I'm talking about, but I know the part that they all love. Yes, I do. Now do you hear what I said? That Herod wondered those wise men did, but on that blessed evening, my great-great-great-great-great-granddad, he saved those kings.
So, yeah, if you want to finish that song out, it's Trans-Siberian Orchestra. It's what really happened to the three kings. But you see how they have fun with it and fill in some holes there. But I do like the fact that if you want to go listen to the song, there's a great line towards the end describing the night that they fled from Herod. And it goes, "Oh, what a night it must have been. But when God is on your side, you got to know that in the end, you're going to win." I like that they kept the message there too. Now, let's get back to this concept of questions. People have questions about everything. And make no mistake, I think asking questions are good. That's actually how we learn a lot more. In fact, there was an old Greek philosopher named Socrates. That was the way he taught. He just asked his students questions, encouraging them to ask questions. Questions are good. They can dig you further into the truth. But at some point, people actually use questions as a defense mechanism. Where I've got questions about Christianity, and I'm not going to move forward until I get them answered. And sometimes people ask questions to try intentionally to trip you up. They try to poke holes in the Bible. Well, did you know that really Jesus wasn't born on December 25th? And maybe they're trying to trip you up and to get you to think that things are wrong. So we got to be careful with questions. And unfortunately, as we move along in our society, people are trying to tear down Christianity more and more. And so much so that there's this whole other realm of thought process that happens in the Christian faith, and I'm sure it's in others as well. But in Christianity, we call it apologetics. Now, I dislike the term apologetics because for the uneducated like me, it sounds like we're offering an apology for Christianity, which we're not. I'm sure there's a Greek meaning to it somewhere in this that I probably should look up. But apologetics is basically we're trying to figure out and defend our faith. So being equipped with answers that when people ask us, well, did you know? We're like, yes, I did know. And here's an answer for you. So apologetics has actually been very helpful for me as a person in my spiritual journey in the last few years. I would say ever since I started really getting involved in the youth program through volunteering, but then also through becoming the youth director, I felt the need to be more equipped with answers to questions that kids had. So I had to start doing a deep dive into apologetics and listening to people talk about it and actually educating myself. You know, I started off, pretty incompetent, I would say, in my ability to defend Christianity. It's not something I ever studied. Over the past few years, I've probably grown it from incompetent. I'd put it up to mediocre at this point, because there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am. However, I want to keep learning and keep growing, because the more I know, the more I can resist the enemy trying to poke holes in an argument that I'm facing. Because make no mistake, the enemy is tricky. The enemy will easily feed lies to our world so that way they can try to tear down Christianity and raise him up more than Christ. It gets frustrating after a while to answer the same questions over and over. And honestly, if all I research for my growth is apologetics, it wears me down. There are some people that wear me down with it, because I know there's some people where we try to give them answers, but they just don't want to hear it. And some people just like living in the doubts that they have. They don't really want answers. And the more I think about it, the more I get to the fact that sometimes bringing someone to Christianity, to Christ, it's not a mindset, it's a heart set. And that's what I want to talk about for a little bit. It's a heart issue. Because I really believe that most people, when they're drawn to Christ, it's because of something that they felt first. And there is a Proverbs 3 is what I want to reference. This kind of gives a little... here's what I'm talking about in Proverbs chapter 3. Sorry, I did not get this ready, so hold up one second. Proverbs chapter 3 talks about the importance of your heart in your relationship with Christ. And this is verses 1 through 6. And I'm going to emphasize a couple words here and there. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. for they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. And in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. I especially like that third part there. The last part of trusting in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your understanding. It starts here. People respond to compassion. And when we talk about things you feel from the heart, it's emotion. It's something that draws you in. And we live in a decidedly ugly, vicious world. And when people stand up and do things from the heart with compassion and love, you tend to notice. People notice what you'll do for them. They'll notice when you reach out and give them something, because it is an act of compassion. And active compassions are more easily able to affect people than acts of logic. Now I know I'm going to start talking, I'm talking more about emotions than logic at this point. And there are some people who respond better to logic, but I would say most people respond more to an emotion and the heart situation. Because I think that if we can work on stirring the hearts of people through the message of Christ, not through the message of John or through the message of Phil or Sue or Tim or Mike or anybody, not through their words, but through Christ, we can stir their hearts. Jesus gave us a big law to uphold. Love your neighbor, right? Love God, love your neighbor. You know, that makes it pretty simple. He's talking about using this emotion and showing love to them. And we can show love to our neighbor. We extend God's redeeming love to them. Now, once we bring people to Jesus, yes, I think it's a great idea to be able to logically defend your faith as well. It can't always be a hard emotion. But what we really want to do is get people to come to Christ, fill their hearts with love and compassion, so that they may fill others with love and compassion. Learn how to think about Christ, because then you have your heart and your mind all working in line for Christ. And if we do that, we can be like a metaphorical Christmas star. The wise men followed the star to Christ. And if we can be like that so others can follow us to Christ. They don't need to follow us to a place. They need to follow us to Christ. And we have to be willing to bring them there. Because I want you to remember, when those magi, kings, wise men, whatever they were, these men who were clearly non-Jewish, when they encountered the small child of Jesus in a sleepy little town of Bethlehem, what did they do? They bowed down because they knew who he was. They understood it. This little child. Now, there's accounts of maybe he's as old as 2 years old. And I don't know about you. There's a lot of rambunctious little 2-year-olds. But they could see in this child, because of everything that they believed, everything they had read about. And they got there and they bowed down because they knew what they were witnessing. Likewise, if we can lead people to Jesus, simple Jesus, lead people to the Son of God who came down to earth to save us, we don't need to lead them to the overly complicated church, because let's be honest, church can be really complicated. There are a lot of people who've been hurt by church, people who've been disillusioned with church, just walked away. People might be wary of church. And I know this doesn't sound good for people who are trying to start a church, but If we can lead them to Christ first, that's the answer. We lead people to Jesus, and when they encounter the living Christ, they will bow and understand and see the wonder of everything that he is. And they will be more likely to give their lives over to him when they are met with love and compassion, and their hearts are rewritten, and they can move forward. And can you imagine a community where we have a group of people whose hearts have been transformed for Christ? People whose hearts are transformed, growing spiritually, growing in our faith education, and giving it back to others so that they may give it out too. And that was my epiphany on Epiphany this year. I hope that in this new year, in this new season of the Gathering Place, that we're all able to move forward with love and extend that out to the community and extend it out to our new pastor and his family and make them feel home here so that we can continue to grow disciples of Christ.
When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see the mountain move. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. All I see is the cross, Lord, you see the empty tomb. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my
We hope you enjoyed today's message and you carry it with you in the week to come. Below me on the screen, you'll find some information on the different ways you can give to the Gathering Place. Please consider donating and helping us live into our mission to extend God's redeeming love. We are so grateful for your support as we seek to make an impact on our local community. For those looking to dive deeper in their faith, our small groups and life groups are starting back up, and we would love for you to join us. Please call the office to be put in connection with a group. Have a wonderful day and go in peace.